Okay, are you, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, seems like I can hear you, I think.
Okay.
Okay, we got a few people. Can I get someone out there to confirm you can hear both of us? Meredith, thank you for raising your hand. Thank you all
Oh,
for, that's cool. Um, Thank you, Nick, for raising your hand. Going to go ahead and get started and I'll start by introducing myself. Um, for those of you guys that don't know, my name is Maceo. I am the director of Citizens of Culture. It's a arts and culture nonprofit that uses arts to develop critical thinking and emotional intelligence. And a lot of the content that we do is about addressing social issues in a sort of frank and matter-of-fact format. And one of the areas that we talk a lot about is sex and relationships and gender roles. And we cover that in our programming of No Pressure, No Shame. And No Pressure, No Shame is an event and is tied to a series of workshops around relationships and dating. And as a part of that, we've started doing these webinars. And the first webinar was with a person named Maisha Battle, and she's a sex coach. And that went really well. And so we wanted to do another one and keep the conversation going. And it's all about bringing in different perspectives from the world of relationships, dating, sex. And the next person that we wanted to bring in was someone that I met several months ago, and we had been thinking about how we could collaborate and what exactly we wanted to do, what kind of workshop or a class. And so we met up over like some French fries or something, and and then I followed up after we started the Ask a webinar series. And so I'll let her give the introduction and biography that gives a little bit of background for the work that she does. But ladies and gentlemen and friends and family and folks out there, give a nice welcome to Allured Chaos, and I'll be referring to her as AC for the rest of the call.
hello everyone. So basically what I do, I identify as a femdom, which is pretty much just a heavy accent on the fact that I am a woman and I am a dominant woman when I have play scenes. So I'm going to go over some terminology with you guys and how I got into it and my bio. So just want to hold tight a little bit. So that's the title. How I describe the practice for me personally, it's spiritual. It's not sexual for me. It's a way for me to deal with my intimacy and detachment issues. And for some techniques I will use when I am experiencing anxiety, insomnia, and depression, because it kind of helps with that too. And I really also like connecting with people and guiding people into different headspaces and kind of taking them to boundaries where they can really learn from and heal from. So that's kind of why I'm really in it. It took a while for me to find my way there, as I was introduced into the scene around 19. I'm 24 now, so it's been a while. And I was introduced by being invited to watch this sex performance at a club, and I didn't know what that really meant. So when me and my friends got to the club, we were really entranced by the music. It was like trip hop, and there was fairy-like people dancing around. And I was 19. I wasn't allowed to be in clubs, so I had no idea what this really was going on. So we go upstairs, and we see that it's like dark red lighting. The mood has changed. There's leather seats everywhere. And I'm thinking, okay, like this is interesting. And I see a lot of St. Andrew's crosses. I don't know if you're familiar, but it looks like a big X, they kind of mimic the whole Jesus Christ being crucified on it. So a lot of women were tied up like that. I don't know if you can see my arms, but they were tied up kind of like this. They're standing up. and they were being flogged by a dom. So the person that is giving the pain is referred to as a top or a dominant or a dom, and the person that is receiving the pain, we can refer to them as a submissive or a bottom. And so the women that were tied up were bottoms, and they were getting struck by these floggers. But the motion of the guys that were doing it, it was so pretty to me how they were flogging them. And you would think that with the way the impact sounded on their bodies, that it would be painful. But their moans and their facial expressions and just their body language just really gave a very sexual release, kind of like relaxing vibe. And I remember being so starstruck and awestruck about how those two concepts could go so well together. So after that whole performance, I went up to one of the guys that were doing it and I said, "Could you teach me?" And that's pretty much how I got started. I was mentoring under this guy for about 3 to 6 months, and I decided, after I got a peek into the whole world of BDSM, after I was accepted into a BDSM family kind of vibe, I don't really know what to really call it. I learned that as the dominant, it's more safe to kind of explore into the dungeons and all that crazy fun life if you are a dominant and not a submissive woman, like especially if you're young and petite and you don't really know much. I didn't have too many negative experiences, except for I saw a lot of dynamics where it was young girls that were wearing the collars and that were the submissives, and it was like older men that were the dominant ones. And to me, especially when I would see some interracial stuff going on, it was always the Black person that was the one that was collared, and there was just a lot of things that were not sitting right with me. So after that time period where I was being mentored, I left and decided to really dig deep as just to figure out why I was attracted to certain devices and techniques and tools that I was learning about, and why I was so fixated on these headspaces and the different possibilities of where you could take your partner. I didn't really understand why I was so drawn to it, and it's taking me a lot of years to figure out that it's spiritual for me and it's not sexual. So I think that's pretty much my bio. And the reasons why I come back to the scene over the years, they fluctuate with whatever I'm going through in life and whatever lessons that I need to learn with relationships and, just myself. I want to see what else. Well, okay, I think you wanted me to talk about the negative and positive experiences. Kind of talked about the negative, but positive experiences, I got to really witness people being pushed to accept or allow their subconscious thoughts and feelings to get pushed to the forefront, and they kind of just like let their emotions explode. And it was really gratifying being able to get someone to realize certain things about themselves and that they wouldn't have really experienced any other way. So that was very gratifying, and it was a way that kind of taught me that there is healing, and there is a lot of really good work that can be done with these techniques and protocols that I have learned. So we can go into terminology, because I know I probably talked a lot about weird words and stuff. So sub, we went over, it's the person that is submitting or bottoming, and the person that is, receiving the sensations. Dom is another word for Dom. With just one M is male. With two M's and an E, it's female. You could put femdom to put like a heavy accent on the fact that this is a femme doing it, which is sometimes necessary because it's such a male-oriented space. But that's the person that will be giving the sensations. They will be topping the bottom and, guiding the whole scene along. A switch is a word where, you can pretty much be a dom or a sub. It's like you can switch whatever role you want. And I think, honestly, to label yourself strictly as a dom and a sub is limiting. I think it's more healthy to be able to experience both. And I think as a dom, if you don't really know what it's like to submit or experience submission, you're not going to be able to connect with your sub as much as if you had been there yourself and experienced it. Same for subs, I think if they learn how to top a little bit, they will be able to better explain or ask for sensations or um, play scenes or scenarios that they really want to role play and try. I just think it helps to experience both sides. Another term is informed consent. And I know you probably hear a lot about consent and like, let's bring it back. But I also think, especially with the kind of techniques and work that we do as DOMs, it's not enough to just have consent from someone. You need to have informed consent, because a lot of the times when you're playing with physical limits and bodies and emotions, there is going to be cause and effect. There's going to be residual effects that you need to warn them about. So let's say for instance, an example of consent would be, hey, I want to do this really cool thing with you. I want to like tie you up in a really cool thing. Would you be down for that? And of course, the person will be like, okay, cool. They're going to tie me up and that's going to be what I'm going to experience. Cool, that's fine. But as a Dom or the person that is topping, you have to know, like, well, it's not just me tying you up. It's like, do you have any arm injuries that where it will be uncomfortable or even painful for you to like hold this position for a very long time? Do you get claustrophobic? Will you get anxiety or experience something really potentially frightening if you were tied up in a position for that long? So you kind of have to let them know what they might feel or what emotions you might be bringing up when you take them to certain places. So that's the difference between consent and informed consent. You kind of need to know or let them know what's going to be happening during the experience and even after. Which kind of brings me to a play scene. So play scene is pretty much once you and your partner, sub, dom, whatever you want to do, kind of have negotiations. You talk about limits, boundaries, your interests, see what you guys have in common. You kind of make a contract to make sure, you have safe words and just kind of like you're choreographing a scene. And that's what we call play scenes. And during a play scene, usually the whole point is to take the submissive into subspace. So that's the next one. Subspace is pretty much a headspace that you go into. Oh, here we go. It's a headspace that you go into that is kind of similar to an experience where if you take psychedelics, if you experience an orgasm, if you meditate, fiercely, like a super meditation, there are certain levels that you can access your subconscious and you can get those endorphins pumping and experience really amazing and orgasmic emotions and experiences. Or it could really tap into something that you have been avoiding or something that you didn't really want to think about. So it's kind of whatever is going on in your subconscious, you can kind of tap into it when you get into subspace. Another thing that I want to go into is sub drop, which is kind of the after effect of subspace. So kind of like, let's say you take acid or you take, Molly or whatever, those endorphins are going to be going crazy when it's, pumping in you. But as soon as the drug is over, your levels, your brain chemistry is depleted of the endorphins and you will experience what we call a sub drop. And usually with informed consent, your sub will know that and you will be having open conversations or open communication with the submissive kind of for the next 3 days after you play to make sure that they're feeling okay and they're feeling safe and comfortable about what happened and the experiences that they had. And a way to kind of stop it or prevent them from experiencing a really heavy sub drop would be to, after a play scene, the Dom goes into aftercare. And so that's the next one. Aftercare is pretty much what it was described to me by my mentor is, as a Dom, you make a mess of things and people, and when you're done, you got to clean it up. So aftercare is the cleanup part. So if they're crying, if there's liquids places, if they're just not stable, it's our job to like have a towel, maybe even a first aid kit, some chocolate, because that will help with the sub drop later on. I don't remember specifically why chocolate helps with that, but it does. It just helps with brain chemistry and like balancing it out. I don't really know why, but so water, towels, chocolate, you have to like hold them, depending on the dynamic and the relationship, and just make sure that they are coming down from the subspace safely and as smoothly as possible. And yeah, I think the other two words aren't really that important. I guess play party would kind of be just multiple play scenes that are going on with a lot of people. So just a lot of couples or partners that are just kind of having a whole play party. That's kind of the term that you would use for it. And that's pretty much it. I'll do one more. There is something we call vanilla lifestyle. So basically, what you do in your vanilla life is what you do outside of the dungeons or outside of whatever nickname you have as a dominant or something. It's kind of who you are during your 9 to 5 job. And I think that's pretty much it for terminology. Do you want me to pause at all?
Yeah, that was really great.
Okay.
So informative.
Yeah.
I think we'll let that marinate for a second. And I just want to say, for those out there, if you have questions, there is going to be a formal question period in about 20 minutes from now, maybe 15 minutes from now. But if you have questions before that and you want to double down on anything that we're discussing or anything that AC has said, you can go ahead and type that up and everyone will see your question. If you would like to sort of vocalize your question, you can raise your hand with your control panel there, and then I should be able to promote you to a panelist, and then you can either talk audibly or you can be visible. And so just FYI, question and answers were coming up, but at any time, if you want us to go back or double down, if you're taking notes or you want to ask a question, that's available. I really appreciate that sort of summary, that breakdown. And I wanted to just sort of open the door to touching on a couple things that I think were really, really that stood out to me.
Okay.
And maybe get into a little bit of why you feel these things are important or where they fit into your practice. One of the first things was you noticed, or no, not when you noticed, but switching, right? And the value of that, being able to sort of take ownership of your various sort of like romantic or sexual vocabulary as dominant or sub. Do you find that there is gray area in moments when you are dom or sub, or do you in that community keep it really clear?
There's definitely lots of blurred lines and gray stuff. There's a term that we call I don't even know if it's like a we. I don't know if they consider me a part of the community anymore. But when I was in there, they used to refer to, unfortunately, mostly it was girls, younger girls that would be bottoming or topping from the bottom. And that's pretty much when they're bottoming, and that's where they're supposed to, that's where the role is supposed to stay, but they're actually kind of being bratty about it to where they're kind of running the play scene, which is honestly intriguing to me, because if you really, really, really think about the whole dynamic of a top and a bottom, the bottom is the one who's being brave enough and vulnerable enough to open their self mentally and physically for the top to take into whatever direction that they're going to take it into. And it's really the top that is serving the bottom, and it's not the bottom serving the top. So it's very funny when bottoms are getting bossy, because it kind of messes with the whole mainstream idea of what's going on.
Right. And then actually I wanted to touch back on that too. Before we got on the call yesterday and weeks ago, we had talked about your experience and the changes you'd like to see in the community and what you're really pushing for. You started off talking about how you don't see it as a sexual experience, but maybe more as a spiritual experience. And you talked about the holistic elements that you're trying to incorporate into the community and what you're really, the movement that you're really trying to bring forth. So if you could talk about that a little bit, maybe like the distinction you see from the mainstream BDSM community and what your sort of personal philosophy around it is.
Yeah. So mainstream, I think, if you've heard of the movie 50 Shades of Grey, that's kind of the biggest mainstream thing that's out there about BDSM. Um, and I just feel like I haven't seen the film, I have not read the books myself, but from what I gathered, it's basically just this like sexy guy who is emotionally unavailable, kind of dark and quiet, and has all these things that he wants to do. And it's this woman who's just open and just so willing to just do whatever this guy wants her to do. And that right there is an abusive warning red flag thing to me, because number one, don't ever play with someone that is emotionally unavailable or seems like you don't really understand a lot of aspects to them, really, because that's the person that's going to have control over your body and mind for a set amount of time, and you want to make sure you feel as connected and as safe with them as possible. And I think there's also this really intense fetishization on, I don't even know if that's the word, honestly, but we're going to go with it, if with pushing people to such extreme levels and calling it sexy, to be able to endure a lot of pain, as a lot of women are portrayed when they're in that submissive role. And I think that that shouldn't be something that is used for a male or a male dominant pleasure, because that's not really the point of the dynamic. Usually it's supposed to kind of be equal footing, and both are kind of giving each other something. It's not just the dom calling the shots and making the submissive do whatever they want to extreme measures. It's really not safe when you kind of approach it from that perspective. But for me, my take on it is, the Black people that I did see in the scene, they were usually submissive, and it was usually in an interracial dynamic. And I did not see any Black females that were dominant. I was the only one. And for me, I feel Black peoples and, people of color being oppressed in the history of, being colonized and, slavery and just all that horrific history. I just think for it to be so fetishized in Western society, and for people to kind of almost not make fun of, but just want so much to connect to the pain that we went through, and kind of not make fun of it, but just be so light about it to where it's like something sexy, is very upsetting to me, in a way where I want to kind of take that back from my community and give it to them in a way that is more healing. Because I think that torture devices and the play scenes that they're kind of stemming from history, it's just something where it's really raw with us still. And I feel like to make a whole play scene or a whole fantasy world of that pain, I think is something that we need to dig a little deeper with. And it's not something we can just openly fetishize when we don't really understand the wounds that were involved. So that's what I really want to do, is just bring attention to the hurt that my people went through, and how I can use those techniques and use those tools to heal them, instead of, go more
Right.
into that fetishized dialogue, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go into that a little bit. I think one of the things that stood out for me with that is that it doesn't center the dom in all cases. It's much more of a partnership, and it's not about centering the dom's pleasure. And I think that's something that I think is important, that I think we take from this conversation. A lot of what I wanted to talk about and uncover was, what are things that the general public can take from this community in this space that can help our sexual interactions on a day-to-day across genders. And I like that you have, the dom, femdom distinction, if you want to use gender, but you really have top and bottom and dom and sub, which really more communicates the relationship type.
Yeah.
So that's great. I think for me, I wanted to ask, how do you see the healing, where does that come from? Does that come from getting into subspace? And is that like an opportunity to sort of shed, your worries and the situations of life? Or is it more from, or do you see it coming from aftercare and the Dom sort of being there and being present and being compassionate? Is it a combination of both? Where do you find those opportunities for healing in this work that we might associate it with pain and fetishization generally?
I think it's definitely in both. I feel just I'll give you two examples. So the first example was when it was happening during the scene, not during aftercare, when she was kind of entering into subspace. It was when I was flogging her, and mind you, I didn't know this before, but she had just gotten broken up with, and she was heartbroken and didn't even want to come to the play party that evening. But she kind of just like forced herself to just be brave and try and be social. So that's going on in her head. That's like where she's at. And as I'm flogging her, I can tell her body language. There's like something is getting disrupted. Something's bubbling up in there. And I asked her, I was like, okay, how are you feeling? Like, I'm going to kind of go back to yellow and slow this sensation down, and I want to give you time to kind of reflect and be in the moment of whatever is happening, because I can tell you're experiencing something. And she just started bursting out crying, and she almost collapsed, and I had to like hold her. And then people got her water, and everyone was it was like a play party, so people were around. And we were really just like trying to get her to calm down and like breathe, and like just like tell me, like, where did you go? Like, can I like help you in any way? And she just said a lot with the relationship kind of just made sense to her in one of those flogging sensations. She said it kind of just smacked her into realizing that it's just a lot of hurt that she's feeling, and she needs to not block it, and she needs to kind of just let the feelings and wherever she's at just kind of be, and let it flow and let it come out and be the way it needs to be. And so she was kind of instantly transported into like a realization where she had a really physical reaction to it. And the next example was with my submissive that I have now. She and I are she's like a priestess in her religion, so it's very easy for her to meditate and have her mind travel into different headspaces. So with her I think her subspace came with how caring I was, because when she gets transported, she goes nonverbal, so she doesn't really speak to me. She closes her eyes and she's kind of gone. So I think for her, it's just being able to trust and let all of her senses go, knowing that I'm going to give her sensations that will make her travel more, but also bring her certain sensations that will bring her back to me, and in a way where she can then communicate how she or where she traveled through a pen and paper. So she kind of, it's like a more of a therapeutic thing for that submissive. So it's kind of
Right.
different for everything.
And then I wanted to talk about your personal experience as well as a Dom. You were talking about some things that came up for you and clarity that you get around your own relationships and, stuff from your past and things like that, parts of
Yeah.
yourself that were awakened.
Yeah, so originally when I first had to pause with the whole scene was when I was 19, and I was supposed to play with this man, and he was this big white man. And I just remember having so much anger and hatred towards him that I didn't want to give him aftercare. And I told my mentor that I was like, I don't want to like take care of him after I like whip him around. Like, I just don't want to do it. And he was telling me, he's like, well, if you are doing this out of anger, then this is potentially an abusive situation, and it's not safe for you or this person any longer. So I kind of took a break and got into a relationship so I can kind of understand intimacy and the responsibility of caring for someone's feelings or being trusted with that. So I kind of had to work on my own intimacy issues. And once I kind of did that, I was able to feel more comfortable experimenting again, but from a different point of view. I knew that the white male, big kind of person wasn't the play partner that I needed to play with, because it wasn't safe for me or that person. So it kind of took me time to figure out who, like, what physically I would want to guide into a placing. And now that I'm able to do that, I'm able to see that I really like to just guide people into different headspaces, see whatever subconscious thoughts and behaviors that they, really need to tap into. And I like kind of helping them through it and seeing the growth from their realizations. But, I'm fluctuating. I'm trying to figure out how to be more submissive and submit in my life, in my vanilla life, and that's really hard for me being so dominant. So that's kind of what I'm working on currently right now. And I just feel, the potential of BDSM to kind of help you with a lot of different aspects in your life is, boundless. It's just, there's a lot to be done there. So I'm still growing and figuring it out too.
As we all are, for sure. Um, a couple of things that again stood out to me was when you said communication and trust,
Yeah.
and this sort of distinction between abuse and play was really important to me. So, sometimes we get in relationships even that there are pleasant elements and there are unpleasant elements, and things feel good that we have complicated feelings about.
Okay.
And um, was there ever a time when you had to sort of, you know, come to terms with your enjoyment of the space given like how you had grown up or the things you had been accustomed to, or was it natural for you to sort of enter this community, and how did you sort of make sense of that in your own head?
It was pretty natural for me, honestly. I grew up with lots of different religions in my family. So there we have Judaism, Islam, Christians are in there. My grandma was an Eckankar. People don't really know about that. One of my great aunts was a Buddhist. So I was kind of just thrust into all these different religions. And my mother kind of just raised me to go with my gut, take lessons from wherever I can, and build my own kind of moral compass. And I was also a dancer, so I grew up, doing ballet, tap, and jazz since I was 2. And I learned that I respond to physical sensations, like when you're on point and you can kind of feel the ground on your toes and you can kind of be stable with the spins because you're balanced. I kind of just learned to navigate through the world through my gut and through sensations. And I think this lifestyle was just very natural for me because it's all about sensations and being connected and trying to feel connected on different levels. So it was pretty natural for me. But the whole stereotypes and stuff that comes with it was just, not always great for family, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
And then with those stereotypes or with the partners you're choosing now, what are those? Who is that clientele generally, and how do those relationships normally come about?
So, in my first relationship, I was with a man for 3 years. And during those 3 years, during our second year together, we opened it up so I can experiment with women and just kind of experiment with my sexuality as much as I could because I was just very about that, as I still am. And it turns out I'm sexually fluid, but to the point where it's pretty much in the gay area. Like I'm pretty much there. You know what I'm saying? I identify as fluid, but I have a girlfriend now. It's still brand new, and we're still navigating on how I'm going to try and have a career as a professional dom, and also still in my vanilla life have this relationship with her. So we're negotiating and navigating and kind of taking it day by day because I'm still starting this new chapter with trying to make money and have clients. So that's gonna be interesting. But so far it's just yeah, it's been crazy with relationships. But everyone's been open to it. Everyone tries, but I just think it's something that is it's gonna take time for a partner to honestly I like digest with that informed consent about everything that's going on. So it just time will tell and it just
Right.
step by.
And then as a dom, what are the sort of ideal types of clients? You had mentioned you were thinking that you might want to stray away from the sort of racially charged, big strong white guy
Yeah.
as a play partner. Are you looking to work more with women or people of color?
Yeah, as of right now, I'm only interested in playing with people of color. Um, I think for paying clients, I'm more open to introducing a dialogue with white people, but I'm just going to be honest, and I would never agree to something where I felt like I was going to give not enough, or it was going to be a situation that I felt like I wasn't going to give someone a good experience. So I have to really take it step by step and see when I can be open to white people and what I can actually give them and what I'm. So I still have to negotiate that just with myself. But as of right now, it's definitely just people of color, preferably women. But if it's, a couple, I'm more interested in having that whole thing just be safe in general. So I'm
Yeah,
open.
so I think that's really interesting. What you just mentioned right now is that you're not necessarily um, purely satisfied with just getting as many clients as you can financially. You're looking to uh, create some kind of service and add value to people's lives. I think that's something that's really interesting when we talk about sex in general. Are we going into it to give or receive or take or give? So that's something I really just wanted to highlight really quick. I think right now what we want to do is um, give people an opportunity to formulate questions, put their hands up, or type if they want to talk. They can type the question in, or they can say, they can type in, "I want to talk," to me directly, or they can type in, "I want to be on video," um, however you want to go. While people are formulating questions, I guess we can just play it by ear. If someone asks something that, um, you know, isn't appropriate for the space, I think it's an open space, but, respectful, then we'll moderate that out. But so we'll move into questions now. If anybody has any, I know there's a couple people that I know from other places in the world. So feel free to, you know, pop up there. And I will make sure that I can see those questions as they come up.
This is water, by the way, everyone. It's water.
That's great. And, while we're waiting for those questions to pop up, we can we'll go into the next bit of things as well. When you see oh wait, hold on, there was something that I wanted to make sure that we missed. Oh, how do you describe what you do to people that don't know what it is?
Ooh.
What is it they're actually, sort of.
Life situations. Usually people, if it's like a scenario where I feel it's safe to reveal that side of me, I usually introduce it as, oh, like I'm a Dom. And then they'll be like, what? Because no one really knows what Dom is in like normal conversation. Like if I just like, oh, that's what you do. But I don't usually like to start it there. Just because what I do isn't super sexualized. But that's usually how I started, and then usually immediately ask, "What is that?" And then I just tell them, it's kind of like a dominatrix, but basically, I don't really, I'm not sexual with the people that I play with, and in the past, it's really just loved ones and friends that I played with, and not like strangers and clients. So that was kind of the difference for me. And then whatever questions they asked usually fluctuated, but that's kind of how I started the conversation.
Okay. And as you see, there's a question here. You mentioned that your identity as a femdom was mostly spiritual. Are there a lot of people in BDSM community that participate out of spiritual motives? And where do you think the line between spirituality and sexuality is drawn in that space?
I think the line where it's drawn is going to honestly be determined in the placing that is happening between each partner. I can't speak for people that are having intimate placings in their homes because I'm just not there. But from what I've gathered and I've heard, a lot of people do find subspace to be a very spiritual experience for them. Even if it is sexual, sometimes it's still very healing in it. They can get a lot from it. So yeah, I think they can be kind of mixed together, but for me, it's very just yeah, spiritual, I guess. Kind of forgot the beginning of the question.
Yeah, the other question was, how do you draw the line between, or the other part of the question was, how do you draw the line between spirituality and sexuality in that space?
Oh, how I do. Okay. For me specifically, what I usually do in a scene is I'm not super close in touching the person. So I have my floggers, I have wax play, and I'll have a rope for some rope play. And it's very just me, hitting them with my floggers. And that's not usually very sexual because I'm not hitting body parts like their butt, or I'm not spanking them with my hand in a way that will, get that, you know, that those parts excited. That's not really the body parts I'm aiming at. It's mostly the upper back and thighs area. So I kind of stay away from the nipples and the genitals. That kind
Got
of
it.
keeps it unsexual.
Yeah, sure. Another question is, how do you navigate the stereotypes people have? What happens if something goes wrong in a session? What about the aftermath and remaining effects? So there's a lot there, but the first bit was, how do you navigate the stereotypes people have? And then what happens if something goes wrong?
How do I navigate the stereotypes people have? Honestly, just by having a conversation with them. Because I think most people just have this whole 50 Shades of Grey um, mentality on it, because that's what they know. And as soon as I explain it to them, usually they're just, in shock because they had no idea that it could be that deep. So that's kind of how I deal with the stereotypes. I haven't really experienced anything super problematic in that way. Usually everyone's cool with a simple explanation. But what was the next part
The
of the
next
question?
part was, what happens if something goes wrong? And
Yeah. So yeah,
yeah,
honestly, you want things to go wrong to a certain extent because mistakes are where you learn. And if you don't make a mistake, then how are you going to fix it and cater it? So I think negotiations are kind of like a rehearsal for the play scene. And then when you have a play scene, that's kind of where you are doing like an even more intense rehearsal where you're kind of just trying to see like, okay, like I actually thought that I wanted this, but now that I'm receiving it, I don't really actually want that anymore. And the Dom will take notes, but okay, cool. So for next scene, we know this was something you wanted to try. You tried it. You didn't like it. Let's scratch that out. And we can kind of cater it and tweak it so that you can get a perfect scene, when you have more play sessions with that person.
okay. And then the other question was, first, thank you both for hosting this conversation. And then the question was, to AC, in a play scene, what sort of language do you engage with your partners? Essentially, I'm asking how near or far is the language you use to stereotypical demeaning language people
Yeah.
refer to when experiencing BDSM.
So with when you're talking about how you're gonna conversate with the person that you're topping, you kind of negotiate that beforehand and see like, are they into humiliation? Do they want the dynamic to be stern and cold? Do they want a warm kind of interaction? So you'll kind of talk about that before you even get there. So when you do it, and for me, I don't really like humiliation. It doesn't do anything for me. So I really just talk in a normal, calming voice, and then I just will allow them to speak however they want to speak, because usually it's my friends, so it's pretty casual. We're not really in like protocol. So
Okay, cool. I'm gonna just make sure that I'm getting all the questions here. Anybody else? We got about 10 minutes left, so go ahead and drop your questions in. Go ahead and type them up. I'll read them, and we'll keep it going. Um, you mentioned that you personally are not into um, humiliation.
yeah.
Um, is there a period? Is it like a consultation where you say, um, "I'm not okay with that myself, right? There's a consent on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I got you, Michael. I'm gonna make your audio live. So let's hold that question. Michael, you can talk. You're muted, but I'll unmute you if you want to speak.
Okay.
Okay, got you. We can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I have been working on a software that does the informed consent for healthcare, for hospital, when the patient goes and do the procedure and they have to sign a consent. What kind of consent is you talking about? You have something about informed consent and I didn't get it.
Oh, yeah.
So, oh,
No, go
can I?
for it. I'm
Yeah.
just
So,
confirming that I heard the question.
informed consent, from how I was talking about it, was just informing the person of what they're agreeing to, with what would happen to them before and after the sensations are done with. But for actual like dominatrix like clients that really are like having people that are paying them, or people that really want intense sensations to where like a contract is actually needed, there are actual negotiation contract forms where it's specifically written out what they will go through, what they will not go through, what their boundaries are, what their hard boundaries are, and like both parties have to sign it, and it's like an actual legal document. So it's kind of the same in some people's dynamics.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you
No
so much,
problem.
Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was a good answer. There's another question that popped up here. Do you have any resources you would recommend for young women of color interested in BDSM who want to avoid predominantly male, white male, who want to avoid predominantly white spaces and mentors?
I wish that there were things that I think there's probably articles that I can look up and maybe like link it to you later. I don't have that on me right now. But as far as books and materials, it's all going to be written by white males. So, but they are really good just starter books. So I would recommend, it's called S&M 101. It's written by Jay Wiseman. And it's really just a guideline book, and it has vocabulary words, definitions, even some pictures, and just it gives you directions on like techniques and like the reasons behind it, and just ways to interact with people in a placing that is respectful. So I would say start there. Definitely don't read it like a book, just go to the chapters that are relevant to you. You can skip the whole penis and all those weird stuff if you want. But as far as communities where it's like women of color, hit me up. Me and my submissive are trying to do events where we're catering just for you guys. I had a sensation gathering in February, and it was a success, and we learned a lot, and we had a lot of people sample the sensations, and I kind of talked to them like this. So I'm going to be doing stuff, but I'm the only one that I know of that's doing things in LA, and I don't really know where you're from, but we can talk later if you have more questions about that.
Okay, and so you feel comfortable. You feel comfortable if we give out your email?
Yeah.
To the people on the webinar. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
totally.
There's an anonymous question that was asked, and it says, "Hi, I'm a massage therapist, and I feel like there are very similar elements at play, like curating space and mind space, and facilitating." And that by facilitating that space, I am the dominant. So I'm wondering if there is a type of dom sub dynamic where sensations are centered like sound, and visuals and heat are centered, not so much physical activity. I would like to transition from massage therapy to BDSM dynamic. What would you suggest to get started? And disclaimer, I am a young brown femme, by the way. So massage therapist looking to transition into with a similar dynamic that they feel.
Yeah, you're definitely doing body work, and at the end of the day, that's what DOMs are doing as well. It's a different kind of body work, but you know pressure points in the muscles, and you kind of have an idea of what organs to stay away from. So it might be easier for you to kind of navigate the body when kind of deciding how hard to give a sensation. I feel like it might be easier for you to navigate that, and I think it would be just have maybe someone that is a client that maybe has expressed interest in what you're also interested in, and kind of just have the conversation start there. And you really just want to just have an open communication and start a negotiation, conversation with them and see how it goes from there.
Awesome, awesome. Um, couple more questions, and or one more question, a couple more questions, in a few more minutes. Do you ever see yourself practicing BDSM with romantic partners?
Is that it?
And
Oh.
why or why not?
Um, I am in a place right now where I'm open to it, but not really. I have tried in the past. I was dating this person, and they were very interested in a sexual relationship with me, which we were doing, and they were also interested in learning about how to submit and be in that whole world. So I gave them a sexual play scene once, and it was just weird. I wasn't in the right mind space, because usually when I'm in dom mode, I'm looking at the body language, the breathing, and I'm not really in it, with my attraction and like all of my selfish tendencies. So it kind of made it hard for me to focus, because I was attracted to the person, and I kind of, when I am doming or topping somebody, I don't want to be distracted by my own animalistic tendencies or yearnings. I kind of don't like them to get in the way. But because I am trying to be open to submission, I think with my romantic partner currently, I'd be more open to a dynamic where I am trying to learn about bottoming. But like I said, that's going to take time to train her, and with that whole dynamic. So it's just, we'll see. But I'm open.
Awesome. Yeah, couple more questions we could go over by a little bit. I wanted to give AC a chance to just drop anything in there that you didn't say that you wanted to add to one of the questions, or anything, where they can find you, that kind of stuff. Just final thoughts, and maybe one more question if it comes up.
Okay. Yeah, you guys can definitely find me on Instagram. My email is hooked up through my Instagram, so you can email or DM me, whatever you want. I'm going to be having a Patreon site up soon, because I am open to having more clients on a virtual platform, just because I think that's an easier way to start things, and that's kind of just where I'm going to start this whole career of mine. So that'll be a thing that you can support or be a part of, like if you're trying to see what that kind of dynamic would feel like. You can have a test run with me when I have all my sites up and such. So hit me up there.
Awesome, awesome. And then last question, and then we'll close. Do you engage in any other practices, bodywork practices like shibari or kimbaku, and how does that relate to your current BDSM platform?
I am interested in learning more about shibari and rope bondage as a whole. It's very hard for me to learn from white males, especially when there is rope and bondage involved. So I've kind of just been buying books. I took a few classes, but I'm really just self-taught. And it's honestly, for me, it's really just helping me with my insomnia and my depression and anxiety sometimes. So I don't feel comfortable enough to be certified in like, suspending people during sessions or anything like that. But I'm still growing with the whole rope bondage dynamic, but I want to continue and incorporate it into future scenes later down the line.
Yeah, I would say that there is at least in my experience, there is a bit of a void in the sort of POC scene.
Yeah.
But I know I've met a couple people with interest in Shibari as well. So maybe some of the people, I don't know if they're in LA or elsewhere, if
Yeah.
they want to get together, maybe there's a small community that can be formed off of this. So
Totally, yeah. And I know the basics, but just, suspension, anything intense, I don't feel comfortable doing that.
yeah, and I know that there are, I think, as you said, maybe a lot of the books are written by white men, but maybe there are some practitioners that are, um, at least female, and then you learn from them, and it can gradually distribute that knowledge,
Yes.
then you can have allies, maybe be mentors, and then those folks grow and mature. So that's all an option, and the sky's the limit. I think these places are going to continue to expand, and the field is going to continue to grow. I really, really want to thank you for hopping on with us and making this one of our, we've only had two. So far, we're 2 out of 2 awesome sessions. And if you're open to it, I'd love to have you back at some point to check in about your progress and,
Yeah.
chat again. Anything else you want to say?
No, I think I kind of talked at you guys really intensely. So I feel thank you for listening. I really hope that it was digestible and you learned something. If you have any follow-up questions, you can find me on Instagram. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for having me and making this happen. This is really great practice too.
Awesome. Sounds good. I will send an email to everyone who registered for the webinar and everyone who participated. So you will have that email information and Instagram. Look for the full video if you missed portions of it to be uploaded within a week's time. And let me see. Yeah, the host name is I'm Maceo Paisley, and that's Allured Chaos, and it's on Instagram Allured_chaos, correct?
No, just a Lord Chaos.
Oh, at Allured Chaos, and then the email will be in the recap. So look for in about a week's time a full recap with the video that you can watch at your leisure. So thank you, everyone, and see you guys next time.
Yay, bye.
All right, bye. I'm ending it.